outside their homeland for safety.
This is the world's worst ongoing humanitarian crisis and the worst refugee crisis since the Rwandan genocide in 1994 and perhaps since World War II.
This week, Durbin chaired a U.S. Senate hearing on the crisis that focused on how worst-case scenarios were again and again being exceeded. Lebanon and Jordan, now hosting the majority of Syrian refugees, are in danger of destabilization as the sheer numbers and needs of those refugees overwhelm them. An estimated 1 million, or about half of the total number of refugees, are children. The UN and private aid groups are launching a massive campaign to save what many fear is becoming Syria's lost generation.
This is a generation of Syrian children who have been traumatized by bombs, who have, many of them, lost their homes, their families, their friends.
But how to help? Already the refugees make up 20% of Lebanon's population. Schools are operating on double shifts. Rents are up. Salaries are down. Jordan warned it will deport Syrians working there illegally, and some lawmakers fear both Jordan and Lebanon may be forced to shut their borders completely as the crisis grows more unmanageable. The good news, the U.S. estimates its food aid is reaching more than 4 million people still inside the country. But the hearing heard how the Syrian government is still blocking aid to opposition enclaves.
Most concerning, there is an estimated 250,000 people who have been completely and deliberately cut off from humanitarian assistance for many months now in areas that are besieged by the regime, as you noted, in campaigns that are unconscionable, kneel or starve.
The government points to car bombings carried out by its opponents like this one Thursday that it says killed at least 16 civilians, including women and children. In talks with the World Food Program, a government minister said this week Syria supported food aid shipments, in her words, to the people worthy of it. Concern about the situation in Syria is being marked during an International Day of Solidarity this weekend. But the tough question is, what can the world do to try to help in this refugee crisis? One surprising statistic I want to remind you about, according to several reports, the U.S. only accepted slightly more than 30 Syrians as refugees in the fiscal year that ended in October. Now, we asked our Flash Brief analysts to weigh in.
First of all, they have to seriously help the countries that are dealing with it with much more money than they have already, and start accepting Syrian refugees themselves. And then on the bigger picture, they've got to seriously take action to stop the war, which means changing the balance of power on the ground. It means taking more risks, frankly. As long as you keep the situation the way it is, Bashar thinks he's winning, Iran and Russia think he's winning, and the whole thing's just going to drag on indefinitely.
I think what we're looking at right now is a situation that was allowed to happen because we failed to act, because we failed to come up with the proper policy prescriptions in order to intervene. So yes, at this point it has gotten a lot worse. I think the bottom line here is to first get rid of Assad and then begin to try to figure out what to do after that, because he ultimately is the core of the problem. The issue, though, is that right now we've got an outreach with Iran. We've got an unwillingness to topple Assad because he is inextricably tied to these negotiations that started in Geneva back in November.
The refugee crisis has both tangible material effects in terms of pressuring the water supplies, the job market, the education systems in places like Jordan and Lebanon, which creates great political resentments as well as discomfort. And the second problem is it creates political tensions that keep rising as these refugee flows increase. Long-term refugees, as we know from the Palestinians and others, become political forces for destabilization and radicalization across the region.
How to help the refugees? There is no single answer. Diplomacy, food aid, shelter, protection must all be part of any solution. Ending the conflict, though, remains challenge number one.